Begin, ladies and gentlemen, um, colleagues, welcome to, I think this is about the 12th or 13th What's New in AT, our webinar series, introducing new technologies, new ideas, new apps to the education marketplace. Today, I'm joined by Joey. Joey, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Marius. My name is Joe, or Joey Fernandez. I am CEO and founder of a company called ALPACA Assessments, and we're a spin out from Trinity College Dublin. So I'll tell you all about that shortly, but very grateful to be here, Marius. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joey. Um, Alpaca, we simply call it a transformational early years literacy screening tool. And we hope to take you on a little bit of a journey over the next 45 minutes. I put this out on social media a couple of days ago. Um, and it might sound rather grandiose and maybe an over exaggeration of an app's capability. Can you spot reading challenges before a child can read? Can you give teachers a laser guided insight into supporting young reception age children to become better readers before they can read? And can you actually, further down the line, prevent some young children from being permanently excluded? Well, this this webinar has two parts. The first part is I'm going to try and read the runes. I'm trying to give you a background from, if you like, a view from the bridge to see where we are and how this app can impact on a number of different areas. After that, I'm going to invite Joey to tell you more about the app, how it works, and how you could be part of this really exciting journey. If an app can, Alpaca can. So we're going to look at why alpaca, I believe, is so relevant today. We're going to look at a growing awareness of the long-term consequences of missed opportunities to spot early reading challenges, early literacy challenges. We're going to reflect on the parlous state of SEND budgets across the country at the moment and the cost of assessment. We're going to exploit, I hope, new priorities and new opportunities that are coming through from the political leadership of England at the moment, and just all reflect, I think, on the power of early identification and early help. So let's take that first point about a growing awareness of the long-term consequences of missed opportunity. Well, I'm shocked. I'm shocked at the latest headline figures coming through from last year. Nearly 800,000 suspensions across the country. Now, if you divide that by the number of active school days, which is about 192, we are averaging as a country 4,000 suspensions a day across the school year. Permanent exclusions are over 9,000. Both of these figures are the highest on record. One of the most troubling aspects of this is children who have identified special educational needs and disabilities are between 3 and 4 times more likely to be suspended and 4 to 6 times more likely to get permanently excluded than a child with no SEND. And the figures are actually higher for young people who have no EHCP plans. In other words, they're supported by schools through an SEN support plan, and yet their suspension and their exclusion rates are the highest that have ever been. And by the way, when you get this slide deck, the PDF will be active and you'll be able to trace the sources of the data. So hopefully you'll be able to use some of this. I work very closely with about 70% of the youth justice teams across the country. I am in a very, very, very privileged situation looking at quality assurance work around meeting the needs of young people with additional needs. This is a common feature across the entire youth justice estate. Children with SEND, they are hugely overrepresented at all points in the criminal justice system. Um, and this report identifies the fact that between 70 and 90% of children in the justice system have some sort of SEND. And what's equally worrying is that quite a few of these young people enter a youth justice pathway with special educational needs that have never been picked up whilst they've been in school. They have never had their needs identified. You can speculate why. Maybe, just maybe, they were put into the bad behavior silo rather than I've got additional needs silo. It's the way schools are organized. It's one of those systemic barriers that I know exist because I was a head of a secondary school for 10 years. But now let's have a look at the figures in detail. And I applaud a colleague of mine, Diz Minute. He used to be the lead of Milton Keynes Youth Offending Service and a passionate advocate for young people with speech learning, speech, language, and communication needs in youth justice pathways. So he's dived deep. So back in 2019, when they looked at 25 of the young people that had identified speech, language, and communication needs, it's quite interesting that of the 92%, in other words, 24 out of 25 young people who had identified speech, language, and communication needs, 79% of those young people did not have their needs identified prior to the involvement in a youth justice pathway, because part of a child entering a youth justice pathway, there's some very detailed screening that takes place. In 2021, 2022, of 86 young people who'd been assessed by a speech and language therapist as part of the youth offending service, and that happens now more and more often across the country, speech and language therapists attached to youth justice teams, 87% of those young people were found to have identified needs. Diz and his team went further. In 2021 and 22, they launched a project called PRRE, Promoting Reintegration and Reducing Exclusions. Through this process, the youth justice team were offering every primary and every secondary school in Milton Keynes a free comprehensive speech and language therapy assessment for any child showing risk of exclusion from school. So that's fixed term exclusion or suspensions or permanent exclusion. Out of the 31 children assessed under that project, following a referral from their school setting for being at the greatest risk of a school suspension, 96% of the children assessed had an identified speech, language, and communication need. I find that utterly concerning, and I think all of us should be, because those patterns are manifest in the adult secure estate as well. Low literacy amongst adults. And sadly, the lack of opportunity afforded by even as young as the age of 4 years old leads to behavior issues, as we all can see, with kids kicking off and kicking out, even if they don't realize why. They know they're different. Maybe they mask their additional needs behind layer upon layer of front as a way of protecting themselves, and maybe all you see is that front. It leads to social exclusion in adolescence and in adulthood. 50% of these young people go on to commit crime. 33% have severe psychoses and mental illness in life. 88% end up unemployed. This is one of the pathways that we must, as a system, try and address. So let's look at how the system's doing at the moment. And in England, I'm not quite sure we're doing too well. Due to decisions made by the last government, local authorities were allowed to meet special educational needs within their areas, but not necessarily pay for it straight away up front out of what they had. They were allowed to incur budget deficits. The current budget deficit across the country is £3.9 billion. These deficits could climb to nearly 5 billion. That's huge. And this is happening against a backdrop of I think, a growing societal understanding of the distinction between neurodiversity, in other words, everyone's different, yeah, and neurodivergence, when difference becomes a challenge. Now, what this might ultimately lead to is a demand for more EHCPs if these needs that were previously unidentified or unrecognized are added to the SEND cohorts, putting further pressure on what many would describe as a broken system. And they're campaigners. And they're campaigners who want to make a difference. One of these, as many of you will be familiar, is Matt Hancock, who's put through a private members bill, or has tried to put through a private members bill about introducing dyslexia screening and, of course, teacher training to address the issues. He would like, and many would like, every child screened for dyslexia in primary schools, giving teachers that opportunity to be trained to meet the needs of dyslexic young people. He sees it as absolutely vital, and many of us do. But where will that money come from? If we look at the average cost at the moment for a detailed dyslexia assessment, it lies somewhere between £350 and perhaps £400. Across the system, where will that funding come from? Let alone will we have enough assessors to do it? And this troubles me. Where is the threshold point for being diagnosed with a spectrum condition? Because we know that dyslexia, as with other neurodivergent traits, fall on the spectrum. How dyslexic do you have to be to get the provision? And you know, what about young people with other speech, language, and communication issues? Because as we know, with co-occurrence of neurodivergent traits, as we also know with factors like developmental language disorder, there are other reasons why a child might have speech, language, and communication needs. Not everything is bleak. Okay? Not everything is bleak. Under the new political leadership and new priorities that are coming through, the current government has launched a very detailed curriculum and assessment review, asking for people's comments. And question 17 out of 54 does address the issue. It asks, to what extent do English and Maths primary assessments support pupils gain an excellent foundation in English and Maths? And it specifically asks to us to include a comment on phonics screening checks. Well, we're incredibly fortunate at Microlink to work with an acknowledged early years expert, Maureen Hunt. And so I want to play back to you some of the comments that she's helped us make. She notes, as many of you probably do as well, that preparation for these phonics screening tests at the end of year one almost start immediately in reception. And I'll bear witness to that because my granddaughter is in year three at the moment and she's been through these 3 years. There is a concentrated effort to prepare young people for the phonics test at the expense of maybe play based learning. I find this quite remarkable. The DFE's own data demonstrates that the test makes no difference to a pupil's reading abilities by the time they leave primary school. So why do we do it? Well, I think many people, like myself, a head teacher who's been through the system, are looking at how schools are judged. My concern is maybe we are too concerned with measuring the pig, the weight of the pig, than perhaps feeding it. But that's a personal opinion. There's a consequence, a social and emotional consequence to this. Most young people feel good about the outcome of testing. But at year one, almost 1 in 5 5 to 6 year olds are branded failures. Why? Because they have to sit the test again in year two. And that could further squeeze their curriculum entitlement. The great thing about the call for evidence is that it's also a call for solution focused thinking. And that's what Microlink does. So this is our solution. In the spirit of evolution, not revolution, that's what it says in the documents. And to evoke the power of early identification and early help, which we know saves money and resource and helps young people. We can incentivize evidence-based screening in early years rather than testing, using tools such as ALPACA during the reception year. Because if schools can demonstrate embedded effective practice where meaningful screening is shaping early identification and early help, why not allow them to be disallowed and disapplied from the phonics testing regime? Let's, in the spirit of evolution, not revolution, let's change the world. So, what is ALPACA? Well, Joey's going to lead it off in a minute, but I'll just give you my take on it. I think it's an absolutely unique game-based screening tool. It's game-based. The kids don't even know they're being screened. They love it. They get involved. They really do enjoy doing the screening test. And the great thing is the data can be then immediately used to support evidence-based intervention. As Joey says, it makes the invisible visible early. And my final slide before I hand over to Joey, what can ALPACA do? For the start, for your children and maybe your families. Well, first of all, it's developmentally appropriate and fun. In other words, it's not perceived as a test. It gives the SENCOs and school managers a laser guided insight into helping them to, if you like, deploy their precious learning resources to have the greatest impact. It does not allow children to fail before problems are diagnosed. It's the earliest time you can actually put in interventions that are, if you like, tuned to those individual needs. The brilliant thing about ALPACA is that it's simple, it's app-based, and requires very little resource investment within the school. And a teaching assistant, rather than a teacher, can screen up to 6 children in less than 30 minutes. Apart from the improvements in reading skills, and it's in line with the early years pedagogy, it helps adaptive teaching, gives teachers the tools to target individualized young people or groups of young people. It gives a positive and affirmative pathway to your parents and carers so that they can support their young people at home. And finally, which is a really exciting development, a multi academy trust or a regional leadership team deploying ALPACA across their estate can get essential metrics and data, and that can shape strategic planning, resource allocation, training, and professional development to meet the needs of their cohorts and their communities. I find ALPACA so exciting, and I hope this little introduction gives you a feel for it. I've said enough. I want to hand over to Joey now, who will tell you a little bit more about it. So I'll be moving the slides, and then Joey, I hope, will take control at some point. So, Joey, over to you.
Marius, I'm going to do something if you don't mind. I'm actually going to hijack your slides early, if that's all right. I'm going to jump into a couple of slides here at this end, if that's
Oh,
okay.
sure, sure.
If that's
Yep,
all right with you, sir.
of course. Over to
Okay,
you.
perfect. Thank you very much indeed. So, yeah, my name is Joey Fernandez, founder and CEO of ALPACA. I just thought I'd highlight straight away the name where it came from, Assessing Letter and Phonemic Awareness Class Assistant. There's something about this which I think is worth kind of talking about. We are originally started in Trinity College Dublin in Ireland. And like actually I'll show you something here. I haven't shown this to Marius. He'll laugh now. This this is myself there. I'm in the middle. That's my two brothers, big brother Simon on the right and my little brother Anthony on the left hand side. So why am I showing that? I'm showing because you wonder what changed a little happy-go-lucky child there who was never formally diagnosed with dyslexia to a chap that ended up in addiction, barely making it through school, dropping out of college early and going out on the world by himself. Probably feeling all those things that Maria spoke about. That's exactly the journey that I went on here. So this project for me was very, very, very relative to what we wanted to do. In our world here, we were looking at some of the key pieces that kicked off. You know, the stats are 100% the same globally as Marius is talking about in Ireland and the US and across Europe. That feeling of low self-esteem and shame, anxiety and depression, school dropout, incarceration, it's universally true. And the stats showed us, being a research project, that it takes 4 times less resources to catch a child early if you have the evidence to intervene early and change that pathway. And I'm yet to meet an educator that'll ever argue with that fact. But what was missing was evidence, unbiased evidence with which to be able to act. So here we're looking to try and monitor regularly the progress of children is receiving instruction. We're looking to try and identify those foundational skills that Maria spoke about. And that's what ALPACA sets out to achieve, to get to the world of being preventive, proactive, rather than waiting for a child to fail. And early assessment is key. I know you are, I was going to use the word forced, but you have to use an early screening at the beginning of the reception. And much to my amazement, I discovered that teachers actually don't see the results that come out from that particular screening point. And that informs how resourcing happens and what's going to happen over the next 2 years towards the phonics test at the end. But really, for us, you know, educators are researchers. If we can listen to what's going on in the classroom, if we can allow educators to create a relationship with those children early, identifying the underlying needs, really we can do all sorts of incredible things. And for us, that phonemic awareness at the beginning is one of the core pillars. It's one of the most robust predictors of future reading success. And similarly, a lack or any gaps there are a key indicator of a child who may go on to struggle to read before they can actually read print. So things are there early to support us. And we're looking at different areas, and I'm showing a couple of just pieces to help you visualize what we're looking at. We're looking at for the elements that are going to build up to the recipe that is phonics. But these are the ingredients that make the recipe. What happened for us is we received 400,000 euros of funding from the Irish government, and we went about a research project over a 2-year period. And what we discovered was exactly what Marius was talking about. Due to sort of an under-resourced educational ecosystem, 85% of infants were not being screened formally in the early years. Gathering evidence was slow, and children had to wait to fail in order to be able for support to be possible for them. We did the trial in 30 schools across the world involving 1,400 children, and we discovered some really simple things. I'm going to show you the platform, but I just want to show you that this has been deeply, deeply researched by the academics at Trinity College Dublin and the Marino Institute of Education. We can draw comparisons, as Marius spoke about, nationally and globally. For multi-academy trust for school groupings, we begin to show evidence that's going to inform not just instruction, but planning, resourcing, and engagement as well. We saw that we could screen 6 children in 20 minutes, and they think they are playing a game. We've also seen some incredible things. Greater communication and collaboration in the classroom and the support team teachers, greater engagement with parents. Schools are able to maximize their existing resources. So maybe it's Little Wandle, maybe it's one of the phonics programs. What we're doing is a navigation system to help support you earlier, but we're creating more inclusive classrooms. I started by saying everybody understands the power of early intervention. What was missing was early identification, and that's exactly what ALPACA does. It makes the invisible visible early. And children are going to play these games on their devices, not even knowing they're being screened or being tested. So let me show you the platform and what's happening here. This is what schools will see when they log in. It's very, very simple. We tried to take technology out of the way. You use lots of different technology. So what you don't want is to have to learn something new. Very quick, very easy to get into, to explore, and to begin to get up and use straight away. Every child in the platform has their own QR code. And that QR code is a gateway to all the screeners. When a game is assigned to the child, teachers or the teaching assistants will simply scan that QR code on the device, and the game is ready to play. By putting on a pair of headphones so that they're in that little bubble, they can play the game in 20 minutes. We say 30 minutes because we figure it takes 5 minutes to bring the child to and from the classroom in order to be screened, but actually the game takes 20 minutes. There's some nice little features built into it where if the child is getting 4 questions wrong in a row, it will discontinue that particular question bank and move on to something different. But the game is very, very, very simple. So let's see if I can show you a little version here now. So this exemplar is for initial phonemes. And what we do is we screen the children 3 times a year for 20 minutes at a time, at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year. And we do that for the first 2 years of formal education. And we're building up this incredibly rich data set of a child's journey, attainments, and underlying needs. This is an example of what a child will see when they're playing a particular game. In this case, it's initial phoneme.
In this game, you need to listen for the sounds you hear at the beginning or the start of words. Let me show you how. Here is tin, sad, and bee. I need to touch the picture that begins with the same sound as sun. Sun begins with the s sound. Sun. I'm going to touch sad because sad and sun begin with s.
Okay, you can show you one more.
In this game, you're going to listen to some sounds and put them together to make words. I'll show you how. I'm going to say a word very slowly. Listen to the sounds, push them together and say them quickly in your head. See if you can work out what word I'm saying. Let's try one. Here is airplane, hamburger, and butterfly. Listen to these sounds. Butter, fly. When I say butter and fly together quickly, I get butterfly. So I'll touch the picture of the butterfly.
Okay, so I'm hoping you managed to get some of those right. In real time, after the children have played the game. After 20 minutes, the scores will come into the teacher dashboard. And we have different views depending on the different role of the educator in the school setting. But these are the simple scores you'll see. So the system calculates, transcribes, and imports the results in real time. And the classroom teacher and the support team teacher and the teaching assistant can all get access to this to inform what happens. We have different views depending on the needs, but this is fundamentally where you start. So I'm looking across the classroom here, and every child has been screened at this particular screening point for rhyming, initial phoneme, phoneme blending, letter name, and deletion. And those are their raw scores. There's a little button at the top where I can move between percentiles and raw scores. In each child, we can select their parent report card. We found that this month, well, actually, no, we're in November now. So last month, we screened nearly 25,000 infants. Well, we didn't screen any infants. The teachers and the teaching assistants screened 25,000 infants without major disruption to the classroom, while giving them evidence to inform next steps. And these report cards are what they used with parents. And they use them in a very proactive manner to try and engage the parent early. Here, letter name was an area that was identified as being an additional need here for this child. So teachers are saying to parents, we have an opportunity. We have a chance here to catch this child early. There's things that we can do. Now, while the teacher can dig down into deeper detail, they can see exactly how long the child has taken. They can see exactly what they're getting right or wrong and the answers that they're getting. There's all sorts of insights there. Fundamentally, we're now catching the parents early. And we have a little button up here called recommendations. And in recommendations, what we will see is a list of things that we can do in the classroom and at home. This one here is for rhyming. What we're suggesting to parents is change your bedtime reading to these books here. For the classroom teacher and the teaching assistants, we've discovered from the tens of thousands of teachers that we've been working with for the last few years, all of them have been trained at some degree along the journey, but many have never actually experienced the underlying need in real time. So it's important for us to assist the teachers to be able to action those results into actionable next steps. And in this particular instance here for rhyming, we're flagging things that the classroom teacher or teaching assistants or support team can do to help impact a change in real time for that child. Lots of other information happens here as well. So this, for example, is a helicopter view of the initial classroom I showed you. Now, what is this looking? It's looking for patterns and trends across the class. We're doing what you intuitively do, which is look through the results and try to find the patterns and see where you can bring about an impact. Here, interestingly, it's bringing out an answer saying that letter name is low for this particular classroom across all of the children. And below here, it's suggesting that whole class teaching and testing will be required for letter name. Every other area is showing green at a whole class level, whereas whole class instruction required. Here, we're looking at a quick helicopter view of all the children in the class across each of the areas that we have screened. Initial phoneme, letter sound, and so forth. So they're all marked there based against the students' data. So very quick, action-led insights to allow you to move forward. Depending on how you like to store the data, it's all available in platform, but it can all be printed and kept with the child's file if required as well. Some of these planning tools I think are absolutely fantastic. So I'm thinking to myself, where can I impact change? In the first year of formal education reception, I'm going to be in the classroom and working on the mat. What can I do during the time that I have? Each area is color coded for the areas that we screened at this particular point. And this is pedagogically and developmentally aligned to where the child should be, aligned with the science of reading. What this is telling me is that 6 children in particular could do with additional assistance around letter name. And it's providing you the names of those children so you can do small in-class or out-of-class interventions. Each of the areas that have been screened, it'll identify the specific children that you can actually work with in real time to bring about change. What you will see in the platform is we will then suggest a strategy that you can do with those children, a target that you can select from based on your own teaching style and the needs of the child, and then it'll set a date that you will retest the child for that particular area, in this case, rhyming. You'll use whatever intervention of choice you have. You have the content there. We can provide a suggested intervention, but most schools would lean back into the content they have to hand to do their intervention, but very importantly, to remeasure how they performed and move forward. This I quite like. So this the kind of data, I won't go into all of the data that we have on offer here, but this is an individual child's results. So we norm and standardize and benchmark the data in real time against other schools and other students. So in real time, you see a curve like this. This is student 26. This is the normative curve I'm sure you're very familiar with. We would expect to see the child within that purple lens in the middle, within the average range. This child is performing very well. They're doing well in word recognition, and they're doing very well in other areas at the top. But most of the times we see children actually in the slightly below average, or slightly below average, or significantly below average. Down to the bottom, over the course of the year, again, we're tracking how the child is doing. In Ireland, I'm actually logged into my Irish settings here. It's just saying junior to me, which is junior infants, which would be the same as reception. But it's showing me how the child has progressed in the areas that we're screening over the course of the year. Again, what are we beginning to learn? We're beginning to learn exactly how that child is working against what we're trying to do. And other views will show you exactly how we can support you as a teacher with additional teacher training around some of these areas that we're identifying. That combination of recommendations, laser guided insights, data that we do the heavy lifting on and inform next steps is what makes this so powerful. So 25,000 infants screened in the last month. It's kind of testament to how easy it is to use, no technical training required. And because it's a web app, you don't need to download anything. You simply access it through the Chrome browser, your internet browser, as you would any other item there. So I'm sure there's lots more I could say, Marius. I don't want to hog the floor, but that's just a quick whistle-stop tour as to what ALPACA is. And I can bring you back and allow you to reshare there.
Lovely, sir. Thank you so much for that. Again, it's so nice to actually see a tool in action and actually have a play in the field with it. I think it gives you a really wonderful insight as to how it happens. Now, what I've got here are the slides, which I hope you will find useful when we send you the PDF document. It gives you some of the pictures, some of the approaches that are used. It's lovely what the teacher sees. It gives you, the PDF will give you a sight of a specimen class overview. And again, it's the recommendations button that excites me most, because against each one of those issues, maybe initial phoneme isolation, letter name knowledge, phoneme blending, rhyme awareness, there is a downloadable PDF. And the downloadable PDF is full of suggestions, strategies, ideas. You will have yours. You will have your own toolkits. This, we hope, will help you redirect your efforts to make the most of the opportunity that ALPACA can afford. What support will you get? And I have to say, Joey and the team are really on it. There's if you join our pilot, more about that in a moment, you will get an awful lot of support materials available at the click of a button. Special mention, of course, to English as an additional language learners as well. Sand bucket to play out all the time. And this is the marvelous thing about working with a research company like Joey's, is that your feedback will help the platform to evolve, and the lessons learned go to everyone involved, and hopefully will lead to greater insights. We started a pilot in England because as data is so important. As Joey said, it's about comparing children to national databases, and he's got a lovely one going in Ireland, but what we want to do is also create a meaningful database in England. And so we've started a pilot. We've started with about 18 schools active in this in the first ever trial of this in this country. They've just taken place, and we're just going to start compiling some of the first wave of information now. And that was feedback from one of the teachers involved. Um, I think she was blown away by the comments made by the children. They were really engaged in the game, and I hope she is now also really engaged in the data that's coming from it. As Joey said, we have three data points, if you like, three moments of opportunities in the course of a year. The next one we're planning will be in March. And we are clearly keen on inviting more school communities, maybe even whole regions, if that's possible, to deploy ALPACA across their schools, to contribute to that early database, but also to actually start to inform the practice in their school communities. And I have to say, Joey, we've got quite a good deal for those first early adopters, haven't we?
Just a little bit, Marius. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
courtesy,
free.
courtesy, courtesy of Microlink. Yeah, we have. It is that there is no charge to those schools that will be taking part with this. For me, it's very important, as you've probably seen there. We really want to respect and reflect the lives and how you work today. So we want to give this tool at no cost to yourselves and co-create the solution with you in the English context.
Fantastic. So again, just to reinforce that message, if you wish to join the pilot in time for the March assessment window, there'll be no cost to the school. And also, I've had the assurance from my boss, Dr. Nasser Sayabi, that when we move to a supported model, and again, the cost of this for a year per pupil is not going to be prohibitive. If you've been part of the pilot, we'll give you a further discount. It's one of the things we do at Microlink. If we see something that works, we certainly just want to enable it rather than put up further barriers to their use. Wonderful opportunity for any questions. One's come through straight away, and that was how are parents responding to this kind of information? Have you got any information from the participating schools, Joey, in Ireland? How are parents enjoying that?
Yeah, no, it's
Excuse me for a second, Naila, Munir, please type something into the question pane. Unfortunately, I won't be able to ask you to speak. It's just the way the platform works. If you've got a question, please type it into the chat pane and we'll address it. Sorry, carry on, please, Joey.
Yeah, no, good point, Marius. So it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there's certainly a deficit model that we've seen over the last few years where typically when parents are being brought into the conversation, it's because a problem has been identified. There's parent-teacher meetings going on at the moment here, and certainly in Ireland, and there's always a, oh no, she wants to see me conversation going on. What we're discovering here is it's changing the narrative. Now, we're talking about underlying needs, but the beauty of what we're doing is we're tracking data over 2 years. We're measuring the response to intervention. We're seeing how varying teacher styles, how different content is informing what's happening with the child. What we're seeing with parents is they're actually genuinely appreciative of being guided early where their child is succeeding and where there's opportunities to support earlier. Most of the time, we find that information doesn't have an immediate actionable piece for the parent. And teachers are going with a very simple report card to parents where there's opportunities for improvement or actually where there's moments to actually celebrate successes along the way. So parents, have to say, are very engaged, thoroughly enjoy it. We have, in Ireland, they call it it's called Developing Equality in Schools, which is the socioeconomically deprived or so forth schools in Ireland. They make up about 30% of the schools. And we see the exact same response in those schools as we do in EAL. And in fact, a large cohort of schools that were English as a second language, we have a big intake of Ukrainian students in Ireland over the last couple of years. We've seen that ALPACA has actually made that invisible visible early. They've been able to have conversations with parents in hotels to say your child knows an awful lot more than they're able to verbalize in the class. And they've been able to send home targeted work. extracted from their normal resources to allow parents to engage and work with the children. I mean, fully integrated classrooms. I'm not saying it's all because of ALPACA, but you know what? We discovered that a lot of the children were very quiet in the class and they knew an awful lot more than they were letting on. So yes, parents universally have been appreciative of being given good news and being given an actionable next step to support the child early in the home environment. And it doesn't have to be on a screen. It can be as simple as taking a book from the library or resource coming home from the school.
Another question has come through on system leaders. Really, have you any groups of schools maybe that have come together and are looking at if you like the collective results and getting some feel for where that's going? Because that's if you like an evolution, if you like, of this data and data.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the data does a number of different things. So one, it identifies the underlying needs, the gaps in the learner, but also how we can support educators in terms of in-flow teacher training. So one of the pieces that's coming on stream over the course of the summer next year is in-platform CPD or professional development for teachers around the areas that we're identifying. And system leaders are loving that because doing a day-long course is one thing, but actually bite-sized chunks of professional development in line with where evidence is becoming available is an awful lot more impactful. And we've seen from the research that we've done, it can bring it back into the classroom in real time. So we're beginning to see those insights becoming available. In Ireland, we will make our first diagnosis of dyslexia with educational psychologists at the end of next year using an AI prognosis system. That's for
Oh,
certain
whoa, whoa,
schools.
whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on a minute. Hold on. Dyslexia, sort of specific information coming from the testing.
Yeah, well, it's like a Russian doll. I mean, so a dyslexia assessment happens at a moment in time on a Tuesday afternoon in November. And the forms will go to the schools and the forms will go home to the parents, and we'll be asked for familial history and educational attainment and what's happened over time, and we'll piece this information together. ALPACA is tracking the child's journey from day one. Phonological phonemic awareness is a key indicator, as is working memory and many other pieces as well. The way ALPACA works is they'll play a series of games for the first year, they'll play a series of games for the second year, but after the fifth game, the system will recommend if the child is likely to be on the journey towards dyslexia. And there's an early dyslexia screener that uses the initial data that's been tracked, and the children can play that game as well. So by the end of those 6 games, we have pretty good insights. We're working with University College Dublin, CEDAR, which is the Centre of Applied Data Analytics and Research here in Ireland, to create an AI prognosis system. It doesn't diagnose, but it says the data we have gathered, according to SASC, dyslexia exists over a continuum. So
Right.
rather than looking at an afternoon in November, if you've been tracking data for 2 years, you have a much more evidentiary base and stronghold to say that that child is likely to have dyslexia. So yeah, many things can happen here, from school resourcing, teacher training, dyslexia to prognosis and diagnosis. Yeah, it's quite incredible. When you join the dots of the data, you can actually help every actor and stakeholder along the journey, from the parents to the teacher to the child to the school leadership, using the same information rather than trying to reinvent the wheel at each stage along the journey. It is game changing.
Yeah, that's hugely exciting. From my perspective, um, I I am personally concerned about, if you like, the medical model of disability driving the entire SEND industry in England, and the cost of assessment, the cost of specialist interventions, the cost of segregated schools when it should be integrated, where if you like, the cost of inclusion, when actually what we should be talking about is accessible schools. Now, just if apps like ALPACA can make the schools more accessible, because the needs of these young people are being acknowledged, identified, and met early, then actually more young people will feel part of the mainstream education process, which means that those kids which do have significant, profound needs, maybe the budget's available to support them. That's one of my
Oh God,
concerns.
I'm 100% with you. I mean, we are resource constrained across every facet of the ecosystem. Around the world of inclusion and isolation for a child, I just love the notion that when my peers at the end of first class or middle of first class or beginning of second are playing their alpaca game, I might be doing my early dyslexia screening game, but sure, nobody knows. I'm just working away the same as everybody else. I'm just part of. I'm there. The system understands my needs. It'll ask questions based on where I am, feed insights back to the stakeholders to be able to meet those needs. But it joins the dots. It doesn't have to be exclusion and isolation. It doesn't have to be separation and segregation. Every child is unique and has superpowers. It's about identifying those superpowers early and bringing them on the journey. But that then does allow us to free up resources to be used where those resources are needed. And with the greatest respect to all involved, if we can reduce the cost and the times involved for screening down to 20 minutes for 6 children, you're freeing up significant teaching time, teaching assistant time. It begins to change the narrative, it really does. 80% of our schools have deployed additional resources into that reception group because they now have evidence in order to be able to impact change earlier.
Oh, Joey, magnificent, sir. Thank you so much. I hope you're interested in ALPACA, and in the chat pane, I've put a link to our webpage, which is www.microlinkpc.com/alpaca. On that form, on that page, there is a little button to click, which allows you to express an interest to join ALPACA. Nothing's binding, nothing is conditional. If you're interested in finding out more, just click a button. And of course, I'm here. As an ex-head, my phone's always on. So do get in touch. And if I can be of assistance, I can link you to Joey, to individuals at Microlink, who are our research and development team, to give you a little bit more insight. We're looking for individuals from schools, small schools, because we know how small schools work. We're also looking at system leadership. We're looking at people who might represent a trust, a small primary school trust, or even a large one, a whole region. We are interested in talking to you all, and we really hope that you are as excited as we are about the power of ALPACA. I'll leave you with our final thought, and one of the things we've said in our call for evidence to the DFE. We feel that the ambition of this curriculum and assessment review should be to build a child-first education system rather than a content-first one or a subject-first one, or should we say an assessment-first one. We really hope that today you've been excited by the possibilities of ALPACA in the same way I was when I first found out about it. So Joey, thank you sincerely for your input. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being on this call. When the call ends, you will all be ejected from this, but because you've registered, you will get a full recording of this to play to colleagues and to share, and also a PDF of the notes. So thank you sincerely for joining us. Thank you, Joey. Thank you
Thank
for
you, Maris.
Azadeh in the background for running this webinar. We'll close now. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.